fighters have planned a national shutdown for Monday, the 20th, to protest against the power outages that the country is faced with. They're also calling for President Cyril Ramaphosa's resignation. The Red Berets have urged businesses to remain closed. Taxi Association, the Western Cape High Court, has ruled that the shutdown can proceed. However, no violence and intimidation will be allowed. Santakwa and Patco say they will not be part of the protest. Let's unpack this now with Floyd Shivambu joining us in studio, the EFF Deputy President. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having us today.
We've just heard the Commander-in-Chief saying that as far as you're concerned, nobody can stop you. No judge, no president, nobody can stop you. But this evening, just a short while ago, we heard the Nat joints giving the media some feedback, the public some feedback, to say, they're saying that to say there will be a national shutdown is misleading because everything from businesses to services will be fully functional and operational. So with that, how are we categorizing this? Is it still a national shutdown? Is it just a protest? What is it?
No, look, I think one is that the Commander-in-Chief gave a very clear message when he was addressing the ground forces of the EFF just now in Soweto. So all branches of the EFF, more than 90% of them, were in attendance to then get a clear command in terms of what is going to happen on Monday, the 20th of March. We're going to have a national shutdown on the 20th of March, irrespective of what the net joints and whoever is saying, irrespective of what Bheki Cele is saying. A lot of businesses, huge businesses, have already made announcements to their employees that Monday, the 20th of March, there's not going to be work because there's a national shutdown to demand the resignation of Cyril Ramaphosa and for the return of electricity. A lot of businesses, small businesses in particular, have been the ones who have been saying that you as political leaders, you seem to be united in doing nothing about the crisis of electricity. This is not a minor issue. It's a major issue that is confronting society, that is worsening the levels of unemployment, is worsening the levels of poverty. It is threatening water supply. There is water shedding in many parts of South Africa which used to have reliable water supply because a lot of water systems need electricity as well. It is threatening food security in South Africa because irrigation system will require electricity in some instances. Abattoirs will need electricity. Refrigerators, which are massive, will need electricity to be dependable. So we've got a crisis government that is now the one that must be removed. And the personification of that particular government is Cyril Ramaphosa because the Constitution gives him all the power to assemble people who must provide dependable and reliable electricity to all South Africans, who must make sure that there's no levels of unemployment at the crisis levels that they are at now, who must make sure that there's no poverty at the levels that is at now. Everything else that is happening under Ramaphosa is just crisis-ridden. The economy is shrinking, and we cannot fold our arms and do nothing. Because our people have been saying to us that it looks like we're just saying, let's go on and pretend as if nothing is happening. That is why we're calling for Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa to step down as soon as yesterday, but we're giving him until Monday that he must resign as the head of state and president of South Africa so that we can reconstitute government and have people who are going to listen to the people and listen to superior alternatives as to what do we do differently, because what he has been doing now is absolute rubbish.
We've heard Malema say that there will be a protest in Cape Town, whether they like it or not. And of course, the court matter is something to not be ignored. Is there no concern that there may be fears that you'll be in contempt of a court order? Because, I mean, that will come with its repercussions. No,
look, there was a frivolous and actually very foolish court action by the city of Cape Town today with a clown mayor called Jordan Gildy-Lewis, whatever his name is. So they went to court to say that there must not be violence in the protest. We have never said there's going to be violence as the EFF. That is why we didn't even go to challenge that court process. Because we are going to have a protest, and the court said that the protest must proceed. It is going to proceed as there's nothing that is going to change. So there's nothing which got to be achieved by the racist DA today in court of law, because they were just wasting the resources of the state. It was a wasteful expenditure which they must be held accountable for. Because there is no way in the EFF's articulation of the national shutdown where we said we're going to be violent and destroy property and everything else. We said we're going to protest, and we've informed all the operations that the 20th of March is a national shutdown, because this is the first major protest action that is taking place in all corners of South Africa to demand the resignation of a sitting head of state. There was an attempt, of course, when we pushed against Jacob Zuma. It happened in several cities. But this one is covering all the municipalities in South Africa, in all the villages, from Denhausa in KwaZulu-Natal to Mhlabia Lingana, to Elundini in the Eastern Cape, to Collins Chabane municipality, to Thulamela, to Musina. Everywhere, the people will be rising to demand the fall of Cyril Ramaphosa, because he has proven not to be useful to this country. He has neglected his constitutional obligation, and is abusing state power to shield himself from prosecution, which is long overdue, on the crimes that have happened in Palapala.
So you say there'll be no violence, yet, I mean, listening to the wording, especially this evening, saying that we're not afraid to die, I mean, if there's no violence, why are we talking about death? That in itself is really, leading to other questions in people's minds. I mean, hence the Nat Joins coming out to reassure people. We also heard Nat Joins saying that social media is being used as a tool to mobilize.
No, look, the reason why we are saying that we're not afraid to die is because we know that we're living under a murderous regime of the ANC, which killed Andres Tatane in a protest line, was protesting for service delivery in Figsburg, and he was killed by the state. We're talking about a murderous state which killed innocent workers in Marikana. We're talking about a state which every time responds through violence to legitimate protest action. The reason why we're saying we're not going to retreat, we're never going to surrender, is because we know that they're trying to intimidate us. That is why they call that useless security cluster meeting, which cannot bring peace and safety for majority of South Africans. They call that useless meeting to try to intimidate us, and called police. We have been struggling to contain crime in South Africa. We have got more than 25,000 murder cases in South Africa. It's more than in many war zones in the entire world. But you've got the police force that just unites and wants to talk against a legitimate and legal protest action that is demanding better livelihoods and better lives for our people. That's just basic nonsense. So we are saying we're not afraid of any violence from the state, because we know that they can easily resort to violence, because they think that every solution must come out of a violent action that is utilized by the state. And we're not going to be afraid of that, because we know that the cause that we're fighting for is a just cause. We're never going to retreat.
Critics have also argued that you, as a party, have distanced yourself from your own shutdown, because, I mean, there's no strategy on a point of meeting. You've just told people to gather from wherever they are. Do you think it's a wise political move?
No, look, we have not distanced ourselves from the national shutdown. The national shutdown is called for by the leadership of the EFF, out of the collective resolution of a plenum which is constituted by all structures of the organization. And it is a national shutdown. It is not just narrowly an EFF national shutdown. It's a national shutdown because many organizations, political organizations, who will be contesting for votes against us have joined into this action. Many community-based organizations, religious formations, the South African Federation of Trade Unions, under the capable leadership of Zelinzi Mavavi, has joined this action as well, because they acknowledge the legitimacy and the sense that we are saying that we need to demand the return of electricity. And the immediate thing that we have to do is to remove this puppet of imperialism called Cyril Ramaphosa, who is busy being puppet mastered by the West and by the white minority to destroy South Africa's generation capacity, so that they can come in to generate electricity on our behalf and charge us unreasonable cost. So this is a national shutdown which is involving everyone, and we are much more than confident that it's a necessary action that has to be taken moving forward.
Yeah, we heard the Commander-in-Chief saying that we don't want to loot, but don't blame us. Don't blame the EFF if anything happens. I mean, that in itself sounds like a threat.
The command that has been given by the Commander-in-Chief to the ground forces of the EFF here today in Soweto, and in the press conference that took place 2 days ago, has been very clear that none of the activists of the EFF must be involved in looting. And that is the message that is being reiterated and must reverberate everywhere. Yeah. That we must watch out against agent provocateurs who are going to join the action with the aim of trying to discredit it. We are in a just cause. We are representing the majority in South Africa. The frustrations that we are going to express, the anger that is going to be expressed in a political and decisive militant way on Monday is a reflection of the majority of South Africans. That is why we are not fearless. We are not fearful. We are fearless because we know that what we stand for represents majority of South Africans.
And, you know, the social media being used as a tool to mobilize, I mean, are there not enough forces on the ground to mobilize? Or are you using social media because Nat Joint says that in itself speaks to intimidation because of, I mean, Malema was also speaking about it, saying that don't share your business plan secrets with the public.
No, look, I mean, it's backward to could even say that we cannot utilize social media to mobilize. Like social media, we have got pamphlets, we have been pamphleteering. We have got posters in all corners of South Africa that are calling on all South Africans to join the national shutdown. Yeah. And we utilize social media. So those people who are semi-literate in terms of usage of social media and computers, every time there's a mention of social media, they panic because it's not their realm of operation. It's these old people who do not understand how
it's the manner. It's those photographs that we see.
There's nothing that has been inconsistent with what we have printed and distributed in society. So the posters that were circulating via social media is primarily the posters that are distributed physically everywhere and are put up in all the polls.
Even with tires wrapped around your neck.
No, look, the tires issue is a separate issue. The Commander-in-Chief has communicated clearly. The ground forces of the EFF have heard him as to how he articulated that the issue of tires and any other necessary measure that will be dealt with must be handled. It's not an issue of social media. Most social media were communicating. If you go to the official handles of the EFF, you will see that the messaging has been very consistent.
So just veering off slightly, the EFF turning 10 years in July. How are those anniversary preparations going? And also looking at the ambitious target that you set of 1 million active membership. How is that looking, especially leading up to 2024?
Look, we have already reached the 1 million membership target by November 2022. These are the activists who are going to be coming out on the streets on the 20th of March. We are now already have begun with the process of preparing for all the programs and activities that are going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the EFF. We had a media launch of the activities that will include an official commemoration in Marikana where the EFF was publicly launched in 2013. And then we're going to culminate in a festival of the poor, which is going to take place in FNB Stadium on the 29th of July 2023, which will be marking the 10th year existence of the EFF, but also to celebrate that here is a movement that has been a vehicle, that has been a weapon in the hands of our people. Our people had no defense mechanism against white supremacy, had no defense mechanisms against exploitation, against oppression, against an incompetent and mostly arrogant ANC government. Now we've got the EFF, which is an instrument to fight against all these manifestations that have been happening before its formation. So we are going to celebrate a huge milestone of achieving 10 years and preparing, of course, for the victory of the EFF in 2024 and for the years ahead when we're going to take over South Africa to give it proper, meaningful direction and inspire the entire continent towards economic emancipation.
If that is indeed a victory, I mean, what could that look like with the ANC coalition being the operative word for that 2024 election?
Look, we're not expecting the ANC to exist beyond 2024. You know how they operate, that once they are defeated in electoral politics, they dwindle into insignificance. They become nothing. When they first lost Cape Metro, the Western Cape, for the first time, the ANC was in their 40s. Go and check the results of the ANC now. It's hovering like 20s, even sometimes below 20% in majority of the areas. We can tell you now that when we defeat the ANC and we unplug them from government power, which gives them some sense of audacity now, they're going to dwindle into insignificance. They're going to disappear from the surface of the earth. Because the ANC is not an organization. It's an association of self-seeking individuals. Everyone else there is on the agenda of how do I get rich quicker or die trying to do so. That is what they are all about. That is why we now have a revolutionary movement called the EFF, which is representing the people genuinely, which is fearless to take up the struggles of the poor in all communities and fight for their battles. There are so many battles that we have got to win, including insourcing, including allocation of land to the people.
Yeah, so
who are leading public
Monday
safety.
protest is a...
So it's part of that program as well of not
a big
just
strategy of your political...
No, look, this is the EFF responding to the demands of the people, to the demands of the majority. Because a lot of people, everyone, everywhere, have been saying that we've got a crisis of electricity here in South Africa. We've got crisis of joblessness. We've got crisis of poverty. We've got crisis of rising prices everywhere. Yeah. But there seems to be no one who is protecting us at all. Then here is a voice that represents the people genuinely, which represents the majority, is saying that let us, all of us, come in our numbers on the 20th of March to say enough is enough, because if we do not do so, the next generation will say that, but when Zuma was there, you protested, you even had the concoction of all sorts of characters and forces to protest against Zuma. But this one, who is in office now, has put us in much more difficult conditions than even Zuma did. Yeah. Why are you not doing anything about it? That is why we're calling for him to step down so that we can take this country forward without minus Ramaphosa.
Very well. We can, of course, okay, well, I was about to say goodbye to you, but what you're talking to is really obviously a political strategy ahead of 2024. I mean, it's important to have your boots on the ground, your red berets on the ground, because, I mean, the elections are around the corner.
No, that is not the case. We take up struggles of the people whether these elections or not. Remember that we marched to ESCOM offices when the Rita had just been appointed. We marched in the rain. We walked from Sandton for possibly more than 10 to 15 kilometers, marched when it was heavily raining, and went to say that we want stability on the supply of electricity, because in the modern world that we're living in, you need electricity for literally everything. You need electricity for education, you need electricity for healthcare, you need electricity for supplies of water, for all the basic necessities. We always take up the struggles of the people here in South Africa. We do not just do that for electoral purposes. And of course, people begin to appreciate that this organization is the only one that truly represents our interest. And then they will, of course, give us the necessary support when we defeat the ANC and all these other clownish parties in 2024.
So in that statement, I mean, we know that young people themselves have not been coming to make their mark. And, of course, young people in South Africa are speaking about how they're feeling isolated and not really a part of the bigger solutions when it comes to, the socio-economic benefits that they should be, a part of. Who are you specifically targeting, and what is your game plan?
Now, look, majority actually, like Ipsos, which is one of the most credible research and polling institutions in South Africa, if not in the world, has demonstrated the simple fact that majority of the people who support and vote for the EFF, it's young people. So like 80% of our vote comes from people below the age of 40 in terms of what happens. So this then says that this is an organization for the present and of the future, because the younger people are not beholden to these liberation credentials that you have liberated you and everything else, even though when there is no credentials to could show for that. So a lot of people are already drifting towards the EFF. What needs to happen is that we need to register as many young people as possible into the voters' roll, because almost naturally, whenever they go and cast their votes, they opt for the superior alternative, the superior logic of the EFF, because There's no one who's going to be brandishing about struggle credentials which are not there. Majority of which of these people were not even in the struggle against apartheid. They were roaming around here, like Cyril Ramaphosa was roaming around organizing unions and traveling internationally and whining and dining with the Oppenheimers during the apartheid struggles. But now we've got an organization which young people are beginning to have faith on. That is why part of this 2023 strategy of the EFF, one, is to have massive political education, two, to intensify voter registration. But also the IEC must come to the party, must go to high schools and make sure that as many people as possible are on the voters' roll. We've got more than 11 million people in South Africa who are above the age of 18 who are not on the voters' roll. Yeah. The IEC must play a proactive role because it is its obligation to make sure that all South Africans are presented an equal and fair opportunity to exercise their democratic right through vote. So we are going to intensify that struggle, and we think that the IEC must do so. And then when elections take place, be rest assured that there is millions of people who never lived under apartheid who are going to be on the voters' roll now. And we can tell you that they're not going to be stuck in the nostalgia of the ANC. It's history. We're now writing the obituary of the ANC. It's going to be buried when we go to elections next year.
What do you think is discouraging young people from being active within the political sphere?
I don't think that the apathy of younger voters is a South African unique reality. It obtains in all countries that when people are coming of age, they're still trying to figure out what should happen with their careers. And majority of the times, younger people are not always in one area. They relocate from one area to another because of studies, particularly between the ages of 18, 19, 20. They go to universities. Their home residences is somewhere in the northwest, in the Tobota. So that phenomenon is not a uniquely South African situation. An appreciation that politics is at the center of anything else, that if you do not have correct political leadership, you will not be able to provide electricity for all the people. You will not be able to defeat poverty. You will not be able to provide free education if you do not have the political power. So we have to appeal to as many young people as possible to appreciate that it is through political power that we are going to be able to provide free education even at the tertiary level so that as many young people as possible gain access to education. It is through political power that we're going to grow the economy, build industries, so that those who are graduating from universities, from TVET colleges, are absorbed into sustainable labor markets in a way that is going to make their lives and livelihoods much more better than their parents and the people that came before them.
And very quickly before we let you go, I mean, any fears, concerns ahead of the national shutdown? I mean, the pressure's building, and of course, police will be out in full force. The SANDF will also be in standby to help the SAPS.
Look, we are not fearful of anything. We are not fearful of anything. The protest is going ahead. The national shutdown is going ahead as planned on the 20th of March 2023. And we're calling on all people of South Africa who care about the future of this country to come out in their numbers to support the national shutdown.
What if they don't come out in their numbers? What will happen then?
Look, we know...
Because you don't have one set. People are just doing their own thing.
We are rest assured that majority of the people that we have spoken to are saying that this is long overdue. You should have done this long time ago. Remember that there was calls even on social media that we must have a national shutdown, but a lot of people that we've spoken to in the townships, in the informal settlements, in villages, in cities, in institutions of higher learning, a lot of people are saying that this is long overdue. We should have done it as soon as yesterday. So now we're saying the 20th of March is the D-Day. For Ramaphosa, he must step down and let us add to the voices that we stood up against an incompetent, useless, and corrupt president who is destroying this nation. Yeah,
because Ramaphosa says the only way of getting him out is through a vote, not an attempt to overthrow the government.
No, look, that is a very narrow interpretation and understanding of democracy. To think that you can just vote and then you fold your arms until next elections. That is not how democracy works. Democracy doesn't work like that. In a democratic system, there are several mechanisms that you use to hold the sitting head of state accountable, including motions of no confidence in parliament, parliamentary questions, engagements, protests, everything else. But this is just but one of the mechanisms. We have exhausted everything. First, we try to appeal, to use conscience and logic to say that what you are doing with trying to distance South Africa from utilizing coal as a base load for energy is going to destroy our country. He never listened.
Yeah.
We protested. We did everything. We went to court to try to hold him accountable. And he has not been coming to the party. This is the most effective mechanism now that we have to use to hold Mr. Ramaphosa accountable. And protest in South Africa historically and currently has played a very significant role.
Yeah.
We are where we are now because of the women who marched against the past laws in the 1950s, against young people who rose, against apartheid in 1976 this way.
Okay.
And we're here because of protest. So we have to protect the democratic gains through protest of removing an incompetent, corrupt president that Cyril Ramaphosa is.
Let me thank you for your time. Thank you so much. We will be keeping an eye, of course, ahead of that protest, national shutdown. EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu giving us some insights and, of course, clarifying and reacting following the Nat Joint's press statement that we saw this evening.